Hey everybody, Neil here from Post to Post. Just wanted to make another one of those, thinking out loud kind of videos where I just kind of talk about what's in my head about the past couple of series that just took place. Now, we did talk about 3 teams that were eliminated just a couple of days ago, but now, we're at a point where everything has been decided in the first round. So I just thought I'd talk aloud a little bit, and you can chime in down below in the comments if you feel free to. And I'm just looking in off to the right here of my camera, and my God, I picked the wrong hat jersey combo. A red St. Louis hat with a yellow reverse retro 1.0 with reverse retro 2.0. They don't work. They don't work. But let's start with St. Louis, okay? Because that's the most fresh on our minds as I'm filming this, I guess. That game was insane. And I have a whole list of notes here on my notepad. So my prediction for the series is the first thing that I wrote down here. My prediction for the series was that I just felt like something was going on in St. Louis. If you watched the video 2 weeks ago or 2.5 weeks ago, you would have heard me say that I predicted St. Louis to win the series. That was probably not met well with a lot of Winnipeg Jets fans, but I just felt like something was going on in St. Louis. They came into the playoffs extremely hot, and I really felt like they could get by Winnipeg. As good as Winnipeg is, I did feel that St. Louis could get by. And, within seconds, they almost did. So I'm disappointed that my prediction was incorrect, but I'm also quite happy that I think my prediction was in the tiny little minus 10% fewer predictions where nobody predicted St. Louis to win, and they almost did. So I kind of feel good about that they almost won. But my prediction was wrong. Ultimately, doesn't matter how they lost, but they still lost. St. Louis still lost, so my prediction was wrong there. Game 7 specifically was unbelievable. We got blessed with that beautiful Dallas-Colorado game the day before, and then yesterday, it was like, I can't even describe the last, that third period, and specifically near the end of the game, as we all know what happens there. It was magic. It was magic. It was so fun to watch, and then, of course, overtime. I stayed up, and I watched the first overtime, or most of the first overtime, I guess, and I did not make it to the second overtime, so I did not see the win take place live. It was very, very late here at that point on the east coast of Canada, so I missed that, unfortunately, but Game 7 was so good. And there's a couple of things I learned. St. Louis is fun to watch. Very, very fun to watch, and they are going to be fun to watch for years to come, and I hope they make the playoffs more frequently. I know they just won the Cup not too long ago in 2019, but I do hope they continue to do well because they're a fun team to watch. I also learned that Winnipeg is fun to watch. I already knew that because I've been watching a little bit more Winnipeg than St. Louis this year. But Winnipeg really is a fun team to watch, especially up front. They can play the big physical game, but they can also play the talented game as well. There's not a whole lot of teams in the NHL that can do both. There's just a couple that do both really well, the physical plus the playmaking and true talent. Winnipeg's one of those teams. And so I really enjoyed watching them in this first round. So although I predicted them to lose, I'm still very happy that they went on, and we're going to get to see more of the Winnipeg Jets. So both things were already true. St. Louis was fun to watch. Winnipeg was fun to watch, but I relearned both of those things in this series. St. Louis is a lot more fun to watch than I remembered, and so is Winnipeg. So great series, like both teams. The last thing I have written down here is that Hellebuyck really needed this win. I heard someone say that that series, maybe that last game really defined his series. I think that was on Elliot's podcast as well, if I'm not mistaken. I just read a quick transcript of it, and that's so true. Hellebuyck has had moments of greatness in his career to the point where he's top of the stats and winning awards and stuff, but not getting it done in the playoffs. Maybe not him getting it done, but it just doesn't work out. So to have him leave the playoffs again in the first round or early or whatever would be a huge disappointment for him and a bit of an unfortunate legacy. So he really needed to get that win last night, and I can just imagine the weight off of his shoulders just a little bit. So I'm very happy for him. Let's move on to the other series, Dallas and Colorado. What an epic Game 7 that was. Incredible comeback, and just the way that they did it with Rantanen, it's such an emotional dagger to the heart for Colorado. If you were going to script the biggest arc between the two teams, storyline-wise and players, it played out exactly like that, with Rantanen getting a whole bunch of points for having it happen in late in the game when Colorado thought that they're probably going to win this game, and then their former teammate comes back and just ends it. You can almost not write it. That's how perfect, maybe not perfect, but that's how much of an arc that was. So pretty incredible. Dallas proved that they're still legit. So I predicted Colorado to win that series because I felt like Dallas came in a little bit sluggish. The end of the year they were a bit sluggish, and I wasn't sure if they were tired or maybe they something was going on, but they proved like they're still legit. Now Dallas has had a really really good team for a long time, and they've proved that again here in this series. Colorado was a good team. It's not like Dallas just finally woke up and then just stomped all over Colorado. Colorado's a good team, like a really good team. So Dallas, although they played competitive the entire series, they really had to kick it up a notch in certain moments of the series. And I think Game 7 was one of those moments, specifically in the third period. So really two good teams going at it. Excellent series. Definitely a bit of a rivalry there now, if not already. So really good series. All right, let's move on to the East, the Toronto-Ottawa series. This one was probably the most watched of any series in the entire NHL playoffs so far. And I think Toronto proved that history doesn't have to repeat itself. A couple of years ago, Toronto won a playoff series for the first time in a very, very long time. And so they proved that. But after that, the history started to repeat itself again, and they just, right down that same path of losing in the first round and stuff. And I think that it was such a good lesson for them to realize that that wasn't just a fluke a couple of years ago. We won this series now, and we've learned from that. We've learned from our losses after our win a couple of years ago, and we definitely learned from this recent win. So I think a big thing here is Toronto proving that history doesn't have to repeat itself, and that they really do hold the wheel and the driver's seat. Ottawa got some great experience. That's the next thing I have written down here. Ottawa has gotten incredible experience, playoff experience that they desperately need. It's going to give them the fuel to keep going next year, to get back to that point in the playoffs. And it's almost like an addiction. Like once you have a little bit of a taste of it, you want to go back. And that's exactly what happened to Ottawa. I fully suspect that team to be super competitive next year. Another thing I have written down here, just another little positive note on Toronto. I thought they played better defensively, way better defensively this year in the playoffs versus maybe any other year in the recent memory, at least for me. So I'm impressed to see that they've tightened that up a little bit. They've got a lot of depth in that team as well. And I think the most dangerous thing, I'm just gonna read this verbatim as I have written it. The most dangerous thing to any other team is that everyone on Toronto believes that they can actually win. So yes, maybe on paper, the Florida Panthers are the better team than the Toronto Maple Leafs. Maybe Toronto somehow gets by Florida and they end up playing Washington. And maybe Washington is the better team on paper. I'm not saying that they are or not, Florida too. But I'm saying that if Toronto players truly believe, like if they've got that weight off their shoulder and they don't think that history is going to repeat itself, and they honestly, truly, genuinely believe that they can win the Stanley Cup and go all the way, to me that's the most dangerous thing. Because it's the only thing, maybe not the only thing, it's one of the only things that's been holding Toronto back all these years, is that emotional, just kind of like little devil on the shoulder saying, oh, you're going to fail, you're going to fail, you're going to fail. And you constantly hear it, and then you fail. And it's just like, well, okay. But now that devil, I feel like maybe that devil's not there anymore. And that's, if you're a Florida Panthers fan, maybe you're still not worried. Maybe you're a Washington or Carolina fan, you're still not worried. But still, I think the most dangerous thing for other teams is that the Toronto players truly believe that they can go all the way. And I think that is a huge weapon for the Toronto Maple Leafs, is to have that emotional, I guess, confidence that they can actually do it. Because I think it's been a big con of theirs this last couple of years, is to have that on their shoulder. Next series, Vegas versus Minnesota. Not too much to say here. I will say that I really enjoyed watching both teams play. I thought it was a good series. I really, really liked Minnesota. I love watching them play. But Vegas proved they're still Vegas. I mean, and that's not not an insult. It's a compliment. Very serious team, incredible team, deep team. They can win again, and it wouldn't surprise me if they did. So really, incredible job by Vegas to show that they are still legit and amazing. Minnesota will be back. That's the last thing I have written down here. Minnesota is a team that hasn't gone far in a while, but anytime that Minnesota has gotten into the playoffs in the last, I don't know, maybe 15 years, I've never felt like they were like actually going to do anything. This year, I kind of felt like, you never know. They have a really good team. But I think just watching this team in the playoffs this year, this is a team that I actually do have, even though they lost, I have confidence in now. I like watching them, and I can see them back in the playoffs and actually growing as a team and getting a little bit further. Kind of like Ottawa, like almost like Ottawa a little bit. Okay, and then the last series, LA versus Edmonton. This is disappointing because I did choose LA to win this series. I thought they were going to break the streak and break history of Edmonton eliminating them, but they did not. And I like a lot of players in LA, and sometimes I like watching them play, but they remind me of the Montreal Canadiens a little bit, which isn't necessarily a compliment. Sometimes they just aren't fun to watch, and I don't think the Montreal Canadiens are fun to watch either. Sometimes they are, but LA, I felt like they held back a little bit. They laid back a little bit, and they didn't pressure Edmonton enough. And whenever they had the lead, they switched to defensive mode, and when they should have kept on and kept on. Montreal does that and it drives me nuts, so a little disappointing for LA there. Edmonton is in LA's head. I mean, it is what it is. That's literally what I wrote down here because it's the kind of the Toronto thing. Like, it's happened so many times. You just have to start wondering, like, am I truly not meant to beat this team? Is this team always going to be the one that eliminates us? Like, it gets very frustrating. So if I'm LA, I'm like, can we please not play Edmonton next year in the playoffs? And the last thing I have written down here is that I wasn't cheering for Edmonton, but I'm really happy to see that Edmonton, we get to see more Edmonton. We get to see more McDavid. It's a good team. It's a fun team to watch. I don't know if anyone should be disappointed that we get to see more of the Edmonton Oilers. They are a super fun team to watch. Maybe if you're a Calgary fan, you're not very happy because, the rivalry and you want them to lose. But I think as a general hockey fan, the more Edmonton that I can watch, that we can watch, probably the better because great players deserve to be seen. I was cheering against Edmonton in that series, but I'm still happy that they did move on and we get to see more of Edmonton. Hope that, a bit of a conflicting opinion, but I hope that makes sense. So that's my very quick thoughts on all those series. In terms of predictions for the next round, I guess we've already talked about one of the series, which is the Washington-Carolina one. I don't even remember what I predicted. I think that series is so close that I don't know. I don't know what I predicted. But the other one is Toronto-Florida. I have to pick Florida there. I think just both on paper and just gut feeling, I think that Florida probably defeats the Toronto Maple Leafs there. But Toronto's a good team, so I'm not going to be super shocked if Toronto wins. I think Florida's going to get it done. And then in the West, we've got Dallas versus Winnipeg. That is going to be such a good series. I think that is the sleeper series of the second round. I think that is going to be the best hockey in the entire second round. Toronto, Florida is going to be pretty good, but in the West, definitely Dallas and Winnipeg. I think that's going to be such a good series. And then the other one, Vegas versus Edmonton, bit of history there, and I think that's going to be a pretty good series as well. And I would say, I guess I didn't give my prediction for the other series. I predict that I'm going to predict that Dallas beats Winnipeg, but it's going to go like 6 or 7, maybe 7. We'll say 7. I don't know about that one. Winnipeg's good, and they're pretty physical, so I might regret that prediction. And then the Edmonton-Vegas one, we'll say we'll give it to Edmonton. We'll give Edmonton the win there and say they do it in 7. Okay. But I'm not going to be surprised if Winnipeg wins. I'm not going to be surprised if Vegas wins against my predictions. So many good teams in the playoffs right now, and it's going to be a fun second round. So thanks for spending a couple of minutes with me, or just over 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I appreciate you. Hope you're having a fun time watching playoff hockey. And let me know down below in the comment section who you're cheering for. What do you think of the playoffs so far? We'll talk to you very soon in another video coming up on the channel. Adios.